Hello there, how are you? Hope you guys are well. Hope everybody's thriving. Hope you guys are doing much better than just driving. I have no idea how this works. Substack. Oh, gosh. They really know how to make someone's life quite tricky. So here we go. We are live. We're rolling. And no one's here yet. I'm a little bit late. Sorry that I'm late. Whoever's in the house just arrived. You're the first one. Sorry I was as late as I was today. My little boy's school has been an issue. I've been having nothing but technical issues all day long. And it has been nothing but a pain in the butt. So running through, I have to make it work. So am I live? Do I have to go live? Now I'm not entirely sure what's happening here. I think I am live on Substack. I think so. Just let me check and say, hey. Am I live on Substack? I believe I am live on the Substack. Let me check and see. You are live. So it says that I'm live. Well, hello. Namaste, Howard. How are you doing, dear brother? I hope you're good. It was a lastminute.com impromptu idea that I had to just on. And just want to check and see whether I've done all I need to do for my live. Difference between yoga, the difference between this. I'm not sure now. Okay. Got a live video. Well, I don't know. Golly goals. Well, let's just hope that I am live on Substack. Okay. Let's hope that I am live. It seems like I'm live. Well, that must be live. I'm guessing that must be live. Not quite sure what that button means. Anyway, let's just hope that it's working. We'll take a look and see if it isn't. Big love, Art Tuition. How are you doing? Namaste. I hope you're good. Hope you're thriving. Hope life is treating you well. I've only opened one live stream here, so it's very strange. I don't know whether that was a bad idea because I'm not running it in vertical mode, and it seems like nobody has gotten my updates. It happens. This is one of the reasons I started doing it in vertical, but people don't like vertical, so that's why I did it in both. Maybe I just am doomed to have to do it in both. It does sort of split the live up, though. So it's got its own sort of disadvantages, I think, when I'm doing a live, if it's only in vertical, if it's only in horizontal mode. But I'm sure it works just as well on a mobile anyway. Just the thing is, YouTube doesn't seem to want to show it to anybody, which is annoying. Big love. I hope you're doing well. Setting Dawn. What is the true spirit of Gnosticism? Okay, well, this is actually quite an important conversation. It's quite close to my heart as well. And it's one that I've continually seeing all of these sort of youngsters. I call them youngsters. If they don't have a gray beard, I call them youngsters. On YouTube and TikTok. And I mean, I don't really watch much, but what I've seen here and there, even Instagram, they all seem to have this sort of new age PSYOP version of Gnosticism. And very few people recognize just exactly how universal Gnosticism used to be. It's treated as if it was some little sect, right? Some fringe sect, a few like Gnostic people, which is absolutely nonsense. But first, to start off with, would probably be to go back to the history. So the most notable agent of Gnosticism, who is, and this is quite interesting, he's not always very well celebrated. Marcion of Sinope, right? And let's go to him. Let's take a look at his life when he was born. I think it was the 80s. Must have been like 50 years after AD 85. Yeah. AD 85 was when he was born in Sinope in Bithynia. I don't pronounce it very well. Pontus, of the Roman Empire. On the eastern side was where he made his claim as a father. He was I suppose in those days the equivalent of a bishop. But this was before the church had been formed. And there were various different opinions of Gnosticism at that time, but it wasn't called Gnosticism. Gnosticism was a later term that was used as a coverall for all of these ideologies and philosophies and faiths, if you will. So essentially, when you look at the Marcion texts of the Marcion Bible, that is undeniably the oldest Bible that exists. It goes back to within 1 century of BC, New Testament. And it was around before 100 years after the beginning of AD. All the other so-called Bibles were modeled upon that Bible. However, this is where it gets interesting. You know, Rome felt very threatened by a lot of these philosophies. There were different versions of this ideology. And the ideology originally did not consider Mary to have been, to have had a baby without being inseminated by a man. That was a later invention. That came later. The original ideology was not to do with Mary had the Immaculate Conception. Yes, Mary had an Immaculate Conception, but it meant something different in those days. It didn't mean what it meant at later stages after the formation of the church state. And the church state was something that came almost 2 centuries later. In fact, more than 2 centuries after his passing, it was finalized. So what had happened was Marcion was teaching what most of the other people were teaching, which is exactly what the Cathars believed, right? Which is what the Gnostic philosophies were, was that the Christos was an emanation of one of the earliest, oldest beings, a spiritual intelligence that had been able to take form through this being, physical being, human, that had purified themselves and had become Christed. And the idea of Christ consciousness that we hear the New Agers blurping about, but they don't really fully understand necessarily, is really going back to these Gnostic roots of pre-Christianity, Christianity. And it was before Christos was probably called by the name Christ. I think that was a later invention by the Catholics and the Roman Church, when they had fully crystallized the identity of who they thought he was, that he was this flesh, the only way of God's incarnation, the only child of God. I actually saw a text the other day where the Son of Man. Okay, so you're going to find in the Bible the Son of Man is mentioned, right? And Christians all around the world and priests, they will all tell you it means Christ, it means Emmanuel. I don't like the name Christ because of its Greek inference, especially since it does relate to a different tradition, which had been amalgamated within the so-called Christian tradition. And this was done during the gathering of all the churches under the banner of homogenizing Christianity and canonizing it. That was the beginnings of the first Bible. And that was, when was that? That was 300. I think it was about 300. I forget the exact dates. 4th century. think it was 4th century. Was it 55? 355? Okay, so the Council of Rome, 382, was the first like proper canon, and it had been sort of established by the council, I think, about 40, 50 years before that. Then the Synod of Hippo, 393, further adapted it, and then the Council of Carthage, a few years after that. And in 419 AD, there were two different councils in Carthage where they further adapted it to become more in alignment with the Bible that we know today, right? But before that, there was the council that had been called by the Roman emperor, where he had sat in and gathered all of the priests to himself. And one of the first agendas at the original councils was to actually get rid of Marcion texts, because the Marcion Bible held evidence in it of the roots of the original Bible, and it being the oldest one that there was a thorn in the side of what they wanted the Bible to become. And essentially, what the Marcion texts described was that this world had been created by a being that was that had split itself off into many beings, and that this deity of this world was not the supreme deity of the universe. So the difference of the God of this world and God, as it were, and this was recognized as being fundamentally different by Marcion. And also the idea that Jesus was the only one that was the embodiment of the Spirit was something that was further added to and adapted so that the rest of humanity could be disempowered. Because the original teachings were agnostic teaching. As you can see, if you actually study the Bible, I was lucky enough to have read the Bible 2.5 times before I was 6, 7. And the narrative of the Bible reads like this, if you want to summarize it in like a few sentences. The kingdom of spirit is within you. You do not need to find it externally. You do not need a church. You do not need walls made by man. You do not need priests to administrate it. You need nothing outside in the world. All you need is to go within yourself and seek for the truth is within yourself. On this journey of the truth within yourself, you shall proverbially leave no stone unturned and search every kingdom within your heart, for the kingdom of heaven is within you. Verily I say to you, right? This is the basic narrative that Emmanuel's Christian doctrine gives repetitively, over and over and over and over and over again. And that's the basic story, which is essentially, that's the core of Gnosticism, right? The Gnostic idea is that you have within you all the truth. Within you, you have the divine spark. You can go within yourself and find that divine spark, and that will liberate you from all of the delusions and illusions of this world. That this world has been hinged upon a series of illusions. Now, if we're going to go into the spirit of Gnosticism, we need to look at Hinduism, right? What does Hinduism say? Hinduism says that the whole world around us, the form of sensation, the sphere of activity, is a maya. It's an illusion. It's not fundamentally real. Yes, it's real in as much as it's part of the cosmic dance, cosmic illusion. However, it is not of its own accord real. That when one transcends the maya of the world, one is able to pierce deep into the heart of truth, and one is able to become fully whole, fully oneself. And so the idea is self-knowledge. This is the fundamental precept behind yoga, behind Tantra. And that within oneself, one finds the guides, the ancestors, the guru principle, everything that one needs. One can go into the wilderness with absolutely nothing. No books, no goods, no nothing. And one can find oneself and find the truth because oneself is the truth. This is the precept of Gnosticism. The truth is that you are an emanation of the high, most spiritual state of being, an emanation of the true God, the true empowerment vehicle through which consciousness is manifesting is within us. That this world is an illusion And the illusion of this world has been created by a series of archons, and that these archons are all working under the prime ordinance of illusion. And that within this illusion of reality, we become trapped by our senses. And this entanglement with the illusion of money, wealth, power, the gratification of our senses, of sex, of notoriety, of fame, these are all sort of the drugs of the elusive kingdom that is used by the archons to tow us, to pull us along certain lines that we can be manipulated. And in the manipulation, we become lost. We become lost in the sense that we are like lost sheep. And the idea of lost sheep is a really good one, because it means that we are like sheep. We are following. Lost sheep, they don't know where they're going. They just follow the other sheep. They don't know the way. And that's quite important to recognize, because it means we get manipulated. It means when we're lost, we get controlled. We lose our personal radar and our personal empowerment. Big love, Gaz. How are you doing? Hope you're well. Yeah, man. Personal freedom versus illusions, Howard. That's exactly the core. So all you're going to hear about Gnosticism is how Gnosticism thinks the world is evil, thinks the world is bad, thinks the world is a prison, thinks the world is jail. That's a PSYOP. That is not the original teachings of Gnosticism. Namaste, Mark Vincent. How are you doing? Yeah, I hope you're good. Hope you're well. Christ means anointed of it, and has to do with your sexual fluids. Exactly. You know, the Christ relates to what we can only refer to as Tantra from ancient Greece. And their form of Tantra involved, you know, the Kundalini. Only the Kundalini in its purified form is called the Christ or the Christos. So that is the essential name that got given to Emmanuel in this sort of, you know, Christian doctrine that was canonized to remove Gnosticism from it. So they took an essentially Gnostic tradition, an essentially Gnostic religion, right? And they removed from it the core of it, which was that the kingdom is within you and you are the essential emanation of the divine. That means you are the child of the Father, Mother, God. That means you are the Christos waiting to awaken. You are a sleeping Christos, basically. This is the idea of Gnosticism. That within each one of us, there is a Christos. There is this presence. There is this potential to be more than what we are, and to be a transcendent emanation of the most spiritual values, and bring that true spiritual insight and presence into the world, so that the elusive nature of the world becomes revealed. And one then starts to see esoterically into the world and starts to appreciate the hidden levels, the hidden reality, and one's occult vision becomes clear. So this idea that Gnosticism hates materiality, this is absolute nonsense. This was invented by the opposition. And we've got to understand that the Cathars also held a highly Gnostic set of values. They don't call them Gnosticism because the church was trying to remove that word. They desperately tried to remove that ideology. They stomped it out. Every time it reappeared, you know, Manichaeism had an essentially Gnostic philosophy, if you look at it, right? As did the Knights Templars, right? And the Cathars had a Gnostic cosmology. The Cathars believed the same idea, that this world is ruled by a false god, and that the Yahweh of the Christian Bible is not the real God. That's an imposter. And that's why you have all this jealous God. You shall have no other God before me. All that petty, jealous nonsense is not the revelation of the true proverbial spiritual head of creation. That is a false god trying to maintain power and hegemony in a world that god had structured and created. And yeah, exactly, exactly, Howard. And so you can see how the church went through each emanation of this Gnostic tradition as it reappeared and stomped it out of existence. But Marcionism was the first, and they were drumming up opposition against Marcionism, and the fundamental opposition started to come into a head when they were discussing new ideas. The new ideas that were being propagated and were being pushed were that the mother of Emmanuel had a, sexless birth, which was not originally part of the story. In fact, there are particular documents. And here's the thing that people don't realize about the Bible, right? There are thousands of manuscripts between now and then. And all the manuscripts are slightly different. And the Bible that we have that has survived from the King James Version, to the version that we have now, there are numerous versions. And those numerous versions have been retranslated hundreds of times to the point where you can barely see the clear resemblance between the modern Bible that we are using today and the King James Version. But when you go back to King James and you go to the earlier Bibles, there are yet thousands of different manuscripts, and they aren't the same. And when you go further back, you start noticing that the modern Bible has been largely fabricated. If you can get hold of some of the older manuscripts, take a look at some of the translations, and you'll see that they are not the same. So there's definitely been a progression where the church fathers have been trying to correct and improve to make it easier to understand, right? In other words, they've got a particular narrative and they want to make it easier for you to understand their narrative that they have pushed. And in order for that narrative to be the one that sells, they had to adapt the Bible. And this has been a progressive chain of adaptations going right back to the early, first Bibles, which basically had come from 404. What was it? 414, I think. 419 was like when they sort of finalized it. 397 in Carthage, and the Synod of Hippo, 393. 382 was the first official canon. I think it was in the early 300s, in about 327. By that time, they had already stomped out Marcionism. The Marcion texts were made illegal. They had to be burnt. The Marcion worshippers were persecuted, harmed. Their possessions were stolen. They were, martyred, persecuted, driven off, and it wasn't an acceptable faith, right? Rome was very anti that, and they had to remove the Marcionism so that they could move into the next step. And each step that they moved into progressively from the step before took them along the same lines. And Constantine, when exactly was Constantine's council of what date was it? Was it? I think it was 325. Yeah. Yes, exactly. The Council of Nicaea was 325. Let me put this up here for you guys so you can see it. Might be useful for you guys. You might enjoy it. So the Council of Nicaea was 325, and that was essentially the beginnings of where the narrative started to adapt significantly. And that significant adaptation, when was Marcionism banned? I think it was some years before that. So it was first declared a heresy in there were certain people, you see, the church in 144 had not been standardized. This is really important to grasp. There were different factions. Marcion was one faction, and there was a different faction. There was an argument he was having, and it was threatening to split Rome in two religiously, the East from the West. And the Western Rome had one set of ideas that they were propagating, and Eastern Rome were not adapting in the way that Western Rome had been adapting. Namaste, Collis. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're thriving. Egotistical, narcissistic, spoiled brat. Call them monotheistic gods. Yeah. Well, that I suppose that is essentially the summary of it, Mark. But yeah, so this council of Nicaea, which was which took part in 325, was only once they had been able to completely like suppress the Marcion tradition. And Marcionism was quite a big following. They liked to lie about it. Everything that you can hear about Marcion was written by the people that were condemning him, that were trying to bring in the form of Christianity that took root as Catholicism. That we know was the form of Christianity that, burnt and destroyed women and children, 20,000 of them. They had to exterminate 20,000 women, men, and children in order to remove the last few Cathars in the 1000s. Was it 10, 1050, 11, whenever it was exactly. And there were a number of these massacres. And they went across Europe during the Crusades, massacring everybody that had any trace of the Gnosticism in them. The reason was it was such a dangerous tenet, because the Gnostic tradition was older than their tradition, and their tradition had grown from the Gnostic tradition. And had enough people realized and learned that the Catholic tradition and the so-called Christianity that was ruling the known world had been a corruption of the original form of Christianity, which was totally Gnostic. And this is exactly what you will find in the texts that were found by the, by the sects in Israel and Egypt, right? The Nag Hammadi scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And there are numbers of different packets of scrolls that have been found, and much of these writings seem to conform. They conform with these ideas, these Gnostic traditions, and they paint a picture. And the reason why the Essenes had to bury their texts and hide them away was because their philosophy was too Gnostic. It was too in alignment with the original form of Christianity, which was Marcionism. This was why they had to go into hiding. They had to bury their texts, and those that were declared of that tradition would be put to the blade. They'd be, exiled or harmed or, worse, tortured. And this is where the whole story of witchcraft came into the picture. Because the original Gnostic tradition, right, was very hinged upon the fact that humanity was an emanation of great spiritual power, which meant that humanity could engage with the forces of nature. That humanity had within humanity the spark of divinity. That humanity had within, right, the Godhead. And that humanity, essentially humans, were as little gods. And as little gods, we could commune with and affect nature. We could commune with and affect nature. And, these ideas of the occult, mystical notions and traditions are really all pointing in the same idea. And sorry. Yeah, there we go. Are all in alignment with the same concept. And So it's fundamental for us to put this into perspective and to realize just exactly what it is that we're facing here. And getting back to the idea of Marcion being banned, the reason they couldn't ban Marcionism in a single day, I want you to think about this. I want you to consider this, right? Everything you're going to read about Marcion was written at later centuries where people would painstakingly go through his texts and use their later canon to refute his texts as being false, right? This is what happened. Now, when we put this into perspective, we can understand and see very clearly what the mission really was, why they were so threatened by this guy, that they took time to go through his texts. So most of the Marcion texts that we have are recorded by Marcion's enemies because the original texts were destroyed. But what they would do is they would keep texts and they would use those texts to refute those texts based upon their later versions of the texts. So that's why that text is nonsense, so that they could expunge the last of the Gnostic Christianity. And it took them more than a century to do this. I want you to understand that. I think it took them about 130 to 150 years to achieve this. And they still didn't get it right. They then had to make very serious laws later on. When did they make their serious laws? The 4th century. So it was only in the 4th century, in the Council of Nicaea, that they were able to actually legally rule against it. And the legal ruling then would carry the legal, could be legally administrated by Rome politically. Prior to that, it had been administrated by all of the churches, and it had been sort of pushed on people as a sort of a PSYOPs. And, the social conditioning was such. So in order for them to get rid of this, they had to get rid of all the text. They had to get rid of Marcion. They had to then slander Marcion. And I also want you to appreciate that Marcion got a lot of his teachings from the apostles directly. Where did Marcion allegedly get the teachings from? So Marcion of Sinope did not claim to invent a new religion. He famously argued that he was recovering the pure teachings of Jesus and Paul. He allegedly drew his core ideas from 3 main sources, right? The Apostle Paul, the uncorrupted apostle. He believed early Christians had falsely Judaized the faith, and that Paul's letters were the only surviving text that accurately differentiated between the old Jewish law and the new grace of Jesus. And Cerdo, historical records against him associated with Cerdo, a Syrian Gnostic teacher active in Rome. Cerdo taught that the God of the Old Testament, the old creator, was distinct from the supreme God of goodness revealed by Jesus. So this is a fundamental, and if you go and Google, if you go now and you Google just exactly who Marcion was, right? You're probably going to end up being said that he wasn't actually a agnostic, right? But his legacy came directly from Cerdo. So that's quite important to recognize just how much of a PSYOP is happening. This is why all the youngsters, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have a copy of the Marcion text. If you want a copy of the Marcion text, I've actually posted a copy of the Marcion Bible with a lot of insights into it and the time and how it was compiled in my channel. So if you go into Telegram, you go at Bush Whisperer Speaks, and you scroll up, I think it was about a year ago, 6 months to a year ago, you will find the Marcion Bible there. And you will find you can actually go and read it for yourself. And I would recommend anybody that's interested in understanding the roots of Gnosticism to actually go and look at this, because a lot of the other texts that came later are corrupted versions of texts that were written by church fathers in order to demonize Gnosticism. So what we have now is we have a bunch of youngsters on TikTok, right? And this is how ridiculous the story gets, right? We have a bunch of youngsters on TikTok and a bunch of youngsters on YouTube. And by youngsters, I mean like people born, this century mostly, or maybe the end of last century, right? And they are basically pushing this Christian agenda. They don't even know that they're pushing the Catholic agenda. How funny is that, right? All these people that are talking the nonsense they're talking about Gnosticism, they are just speaking the propaganda that was fed to us by the Catholic fathers. And most of this PSYOP nonsense was created towards and coming out of the Crusades. So this is what's going on. The idea that people have of Gnosticism is the idea that the church wanted people to have of Gnosticism, because the church desired people to have this twisted idea, because you can't take it seriously. And it's very sad, because it sort of shows a disconnection, right? When you start to look at the Vedic traditions and you start to look at the Gnostic traditions, you can actually see they are very close. Very, very, very close. The Gita, for example, is you could argue that the Gita is a metaphorical allegory, which is a Gnostic text. And if you study the what you're extracting wisdom-wise out of the Gita, and what comes from the bhakti of Krishna and the bhakti of India, from many of the traditions, it's in alignment with Gnostic values and Gnostic cosmology and traditions. And Kala means time, and Maya means illusion. And Maya and Kala are locked in a dance. This is how they cosmically align these concepts. And that us human beings are drunk by this dance of Kala and Maya. And this is why corruption exists, right? The impulse of younger generations to seek something outside of the enforced room is a good one. But yes, they are arriving at proper conclusions. Well, our tuition, I like that you point that out. But don't you find it funny that the impulse of the younger generations to seek something outside of the enforced norm, don't you find it funny that what they end up spewing is the norm that was created by the Catholic Church? I mean, you got to laugh, right? There's something quite twisted with that if you think about it, right? It's like, I'm a rebel. I'm going to rebel against capitalism by becoming a CEO of the biggest corporation that ever existed. Why did you become the biggest CEO of the biggest corporation that ever existed? I wanted to make more money than everyone else. That's how I rebel against capitalism. It doesn't really tally out, does it? Right? It doesn't work, right? Like if you're going to rebel against capitalism, then, then move into a non-financialized system, right? Move into a system of basic, move off grid and become resource oriented and trade resources with your neighbors in a non-capitalistic way. Capital meaning money, right? Capital means money. So capital doesn't mean resource, it means money. The capital that you put forward in order to get a resource. But if you start trading resources, that's a different story. And if you equate the resources to what your value is, like if you need potatoes, then they're valuable to you. And if they need apples, they're valuable to them. So you'll trade your apples for their potatoes. And so you could see how a resource-based economy, not really the correct word for economy, but the idea of a resource-based trade system would be a solution to an anti-capitalist agenda. However, you cannot become an anti-capitalist by making a lot of money, right? And a lot of people do this. They go, well, I'm going to make millions so that I can buy myself a farm off grid. There's something quite twisted about that, right? I'm going to make like $50 million so that I can buy myself a big chunk of land off grid and live there with like people and become anti-capitalist. And people are doing this, by the way. And a lot of the younger people do this, and they use cryptocurrency, which is like the primordial currency. Like, okay, let's step into this financial world for a moment, right? What is cryptocurrency? Everybody thinks that cryptocurrency, well, a lot of people thought that it was the solution, that it's going to save us from our financial woes because money's theft and it's all corrupt and inflation is invented and people are having their resources stolen. Yes, true. But who really invented cryptocurrency? I'm not saying who was the one who released it into the public domain. I'm saying who actually came up with the idea. Well, the most likely person to have invented it were the people who wanted to move money without anybody else seeing money moving. Right? And that wasn't the average man on the street. There were very rich people that wanted to be able to move money. Let me give you an example. Let's say you've got an off-the-books system that you're running. Let's say it's a secret space or a secret technology lab, right? Black Ops. You can't fund that legitimately. It's very difficult to filter money through shell companies to get the money to those people. A lot of money falls off the wagon along the way in order to create the illusion of legitimacy. And during that journey of the money is devalued significantly because there are costs along the way. So if you want to get like $10 billion to a Black Ops op team that are developing technology, then you probably have to start off with $50 billion, right? It was far easier to have a form of cryptocurrency that could be moved without being tracked and traced so that money could be moved directly where you wanted without anyone being able to track it. So understand that the real creators of cryptocurrency were not the people that we think they were. Bitcoin, it's if you look at it, if you really start looking at it, I knew this when Bitcoin came out in, when was it, 2008, 2009, whenever it was, decades ago, right? And all my friends were like, buy into it now. And I was like thinking, well, I had £1,000. No, what did I had? Man, I had about £8,000. I could have easily bought a few £1,000s worth of Bitcoin. And at that time, the Bitcoin was much less than £1. So I could have very easily bought myself 4,000 or 5,000 or 3,000, 4,000 Bitcoins, right? Which would be now worth a lot of money then, but I didn't. And I had this discussion with my ex-wife, and she was like, but don't you think it's going to make money? I said, I know it'll make a lot of money, but I won't feel comfortable making money knowing that I am part of a crew of people that are making it possible for the deep shadow government and the deep shadow players to be able to move money secretly between each other. And that will also become a big pushing motion towards digital currency, which will take cash out of the hands of people, which will cause people to be one step closer to the transhumanist program. So I knew about transhumanism decades ago, and I knew that that was the end game, and I knew that that was where we were moving towards. And I did not want to be someone who was profiting off of pushing humanity towards transhumanism. So anybody that's benefiting from digital currency is part of the disease that is pushing humanity towards transhumanism. And they just don't know it. They don't understand it, or they don't want to know it because they don't want to feel guilty about all the money they've made. That's fine. But there are altruistic people who knew this right in the beginning. And even though I knew, sure, I could have put in like $10,000, $5,000 and turned it into hundreds of thousands of dollars easily, or millions, maybe even. It was not something I felt comfortable with. And this is another example of just how the whole sphere of world around us is an illusion. The economic system is an illusion, right? The news is an illusion, right? The education system is pulling the wool over our eyes, getting us lost in an illusion. And so the reason why everything is modeled in this form of illusion is because that's the fundamental structure of this world. The black magicians have to follow the rules. You think so, Gaz? Of course, Elon Musk's shoulder shoulder deep in the brown stuff, you know. Um, and I don't know whether I would say that this reality has no future, and I don't think you know. I agree with you that no one gets out of here alive, Gaz. No one gets out alive, right? And something to remind yourself whenever you get stressed by life, remind yourself that you're not going to get out of here alive. No one does. It'll take the edge off of things, because you realize that there's a bigger dilemma waiting, right? That this body will fall away. So in a sense, I see what you mean by, like, everybody gets unalived, but in terms of the war that we're fighting for our freedom of our thoughts and for our freedom of our minds, I think that I have optimism. I'll be honest with you. I believe that they will push and push and push and push and push until the system collapses. And when it collapses, they will put their orders in place. But humanity has a way of adapting. It's why we've survived all these cataclysms. It's why we were able to survive every time. We have a way of adapting. And when the going gets tough, that's when the tough gets growing, right? How's that for a new one, baby? When the going gets tough, the tough gets growing. And when the tough gets growing, they grow into their psychic potential. They grow into the siddhi. They grow into their spiritual power. And through that power, the rest of humanity gets awoken and moved. And I don't think we're in that phase of awakening now, like all the new agers like to vomit at each other. Like, oh, the world is just so awakened right now. It's like, dude, get on a blooming airplane and go to Africa, go to Asia, go to the third world, go and take a look at what's going on, and then come back and tell me how awakened the whole world is. It's how lovely it is. The propaganda you've seen on your TV isn't reality. Wake up. And you only really get to appreciate this when you travel, when you go out and you go, and I think a lot of humanity will unfortunately fade away, but that is a free will choice, hey, Gaz. If people don't want to be responsible and take responsibility, then that's what happens, right? If people just want to live the life that's easy, that's given to them, right? They don't want to think for themselves. They don't want to ask difficult questions. They don't want to challenge, right? And sadly, this is not necessarily an innate state for people to be in. I think this is part of the indoctrinated state. It's part of the education, the religious brainwashing, the school brainwashing, the financial system that has brainwashed us into a state of fear and panic, which is a very real reality. When you become a parent, you have to be very conscious of the financial realities with your child, for example. So, it is what it is. They do have us by the proverbial balls, and they are squeezing. But I do have faith in humanity's ability to adapt, and that within humanity there will be a spark, and there will be those that will rise up, And when the fire gets burning, that's when, like, for example, in my life, I've put myself through my paces. It's part of the shamanic tradition. Let's jump into shamanism for a moment. Shamanism is very Gnostic, by the way. In fact, arguably, you could say that the Gnostic tenets come from the shamanic concept. What is shamanism, really? Shamanism says that we're living in a dream, that this is dream time, that it's not real, that this dream time is just a great dream, that we're dreaming, and that this dream consists of 3 fundamental dreams that impinge to facilitate this dream. The Maya, that the world that we're living in isn't real. It's not the fundamental true world. I want you to understand what that means. When the shamanic idea that we are in dream time, it suggests that we are sleeping, that we are elsewhere, firstly, and that we are sleeping and that we are dreaming here. Really important to recognize. That's a big, big fundamental part of Gnosticism. The shamanic tradition also teaches that you have within yourself a vastness. And within this vastness, there is room for everything, room for everyone. You can find your ancestors, your guides, and your ancestors carry the lineage that becomes you through your future and your past. And that you can access your lineage with your ancestors through the future and the past right here, right now within yourself. So when you start to really break down the principles of shamanism, it's totally Gnostic. It's totally suggesting that within you there is gnosis. Gnosis is true self-knowledge, and that true self-knowledge is the heritage that you have been given by your ancestors. Namaste, clear path. How are you? I hope you are well. Big love. So this idea of the shamanic path and gnosis and the Vedic path of Maya with Kala, they're all the same idea. They're all the same philosophy. Essentially, they're no different. And knowledge does give us options. And the exercise of will free us when we recognize and realize. Just let my girlfriend know I'm on a live quickly, or she will maybe I didn't mention to her I was doing a live. Okay, sorry about that, peeps. Just letting my lady love know that I'm on a live. So yeah, this very idea that we are in a dream time itself is quite fundamental and quite important to recognize. And we can also, we can discover a lot about the nature of ourselves when we start to look at our ancestors. That's what the shamanic tradition says. And big part of shamanism involves challenging yourself. Namaste, dear Hollow Bone Hawk. How are you? I hope you're good. I hope your journey was good. We've just breached into the shamanic quarter as it relates to gnosis, self-knowledge. And so the shamanic tradition is that the only thing that you can ever know is yourself. But yourself is the same self that lives within the animal kingdom. And that we're all sharing the great self, the great spirit is the same being. And so within me, I have a hypercosmic connection with that animal, right? And the spirit of that animal is within me. In the same way that the spirit of me is within that animal, right? And that this is all happening within me. So it suggests that within you is the entire universe. Dreamtime. That all of these different life forms, all of these beings are all emanations from within me. And that I am an emanation from within all of these life forms. And that's the fundamental connection. This is the whole thing about connecting with the guides. It's not I'm going to psychologically connect, which is archetypally related to the concept of that animal. No, that's not shamanic cosmology. You are connecting with that animal. How do I know? Well, I know when I'm walking into a buffalo stampede and my life is about to be finished, right? That when I connect with the spirit of the buffalo and open myself up to the spirit of the buffalo, she protects me from all of the buffaloes in the buffalo stampede, and I come out the back end not hurt. This is not theoretical. This happened. Other times when I was charged by bull, connecting with the spirit of the bull, surrendering to the spirit of the bull. The spirit of the bull enters into the bulls that are charging me, and they stop right in front of me with their horns touching me. The same for the wild boar. The same for large snakes, right? So, these spiritual connections that we have with these beings are not just in our minds, they're an actual tangible connection within the other physical beings. And you can only test this when you go into the wild with these animals. Namaste, Vince. How are you doing? Shalom. I hope you're well. So that's the true roots of shamanic initiation. Involves your guides saying, do this, have faith, and you do it. And you feel the spiritual connection with that animal, and you feel yourself inside that animal and that animal inside you. And that it's not just some archetypal psychological connection like people would like you to believe, that it's just abstract mental notions, but it's relative. And no, it's a visceral, vibrational, real connection that you can control the animal with your thoughts, and that animal's thoughts can come into you and can move you in a dance, so that it's no longer you dancing, but it's that animal dancing through you, so that you and that consciousness are merging. And in that merging, you are being released of the Maya, of the illusion around you. And you're able to freely travel outside of your body into different corridors of this Maya, of this dream, and recognize different aspects of the dream time. And when you travel out, you notice you're not alone. The same animals that are here with you in the wilderness are here with you in the dream time, right? So there's something to contemplate, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of these initiations and shamanism, true shamanic initiations, they don't involve incense or bells or gongs or breath work. Yeah, sure, there's training that you do, lots of extensive training that might involve breathing, but those are not initiations. Those are just training exercises that you're supposed to do to enter into a union with the spiritual intelligence. Namaste, dear Darlene. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope you're thriving. So, the shamanic tradition, the Gnostic tradition, the Vedic tradition, they're singular, right? And the shamanic tradition from the Himalayas are not different in this philosophy to the shamanic traditions that you hear about when you hear the elders of the Native Americans speaking, right? It's not different either. They speak of the Great Spirit and how the Great Spirit of this animal is within them, and how they get absorbed into the Great Spirit of this animal. This is exactly what happens. It's a visceral experience. So the bounds of consciousness that are trapped within the structure, the etheric field of form, is very much an illusion. And understanding that illusion doesn't mean that reality is evil. Doesn't mean that you hate reality. This was how some of the Christian minds related to that. They wanted to make that cosmology of Gnosticism something born of hatred. So they framed it when they wrote about it, which is what all the kids are reading about. They're reading the propaganda of the early church fathers about Gnosticism. And they read that propaganda and they think, well, that must be what Gnosticism is. It's this evil, horrible, hateful, hating physical matter. No. There's a celebration. You see, Gnosticism was also very deeply embedded within nature, right? Respect for nature. And this is quite an important key to understand. When you're looking at pagan traditions, right? The pagan traditions are very interesting, They are not so far removed, right? They speak about all these different worlds, right? The 9 worlds. And then you get the Sufi tradition speaking about the 9 spheres, right? and the Vedics speaking about the Lokas, and the Gnostic tradition speaking about the eight heavens, right? The seventh heaven and the eighth heaven that was formed, and this world is 9 worlds. They're speaking about different layers of reality, and that these different layers of reality each have their own fundamental principles and laws that bind them. And this in itself is indication of illusion, because the fundamental reality here in this space is not what it seems to be. We seem like we're bound in this space, but if we change our vibrational field, we're in another space. And if we change our vibrational field, we're in a different space. And so what is the nature of reality? You can't say that reality is A or B or C. Example, I could go outside and say that reality is the ground under your feet. Exactly, Yggdrasil, Arlene. Yes, brilliant. The Yggdrasil, the great tree, which is a concept which is universal once again, right? Not new. So the spirit of Gnosticism is a very, very simple tenet. And this is why, if you look at the early traditions of Emmanuel and the Bible, right? I don't like to go into the Bible, but there's enough truth hidden within the Bible that a wise person can find the truth even amidst the lies. So don't think that the Bible is just a waste of time. There is truth within it, but you've got to sift out the brown stuff, right? It's like you've got a big vat of excrement, right? But within that excrement, there are chunks of gold. And if you're willing to sift through the excrement, you're going to come out with a whole lot of gold. You just got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and get your hands full of shit. Sorry, but that's what the Bible is in modern times. Full of gold, but you're going to get shit all over your hands in the process of digging for the gold. And a lot of people get confused. They pull out chunks of shit and they say, look at this gold. And their eyes are a bit like, demented. Like, that's not gold, mate. That's solidified, crystallized shite that you got in your hands. It's brown. It smells. Don't squeeze it, because it's gonna, you'll notice the texture. It isn't gold. So this is really what we're facing, and I think that this is sort of fundamental to understand, like, the world we're in now. There is so much nonsense in the world. Hey, what are you doing? Where's the daddy's little boy? Hey, there you go. What? Want to go there? There you go. There you go. Yeah. Oh, he's a moody little guy. He's been very moody today. He's been in a funny little mood. Yes, art tuition. People have fallen in love with the shit and they're scared of gold. That's a good way of putting it. Just let me get that right. There we go. Yeah, I mean that is essentially a big part of the problem. Perfect. Let's get it right. Come on, baby. Let's get it exactly right. So, when we start to look into the concepts, right, that have been sort of pushed upon us, we live in Denise's world of death. Welcome, dear Bernadine. I hope you're well. I don't think that that's real. Like, having drowned as a child, I can tell you the most prominent memory was like, oh, this feels like waking up from a dream. I mean, after the excruciating pain and all of the trauma that comes with dying, right? After that, you feel like you don't even feel like you don't lose consciousness. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some people do. Maybe drowning, you don't lose consciousness. You stay awake through the whole period. But it's just like you just feel like you're awakening into a more part of yourself that you'd forgotten. It's sort of like you were living It's like you were diving in the sea with a snorkel and the goggles, and then you come out of the ocean and you take the snorkel and the goggles off, and you go like, "Oh wow, there's a whole world out here." It's like that. Like there's a whole more, and it feels like just shedding, shedding something, and that you've remembered this part of yourself. Like, how could I have forgotten that this was here? Kind of feeling. Like imagine you go diving and you're in the water for a long time and you get so used to being under the water, then you come out of the water and there's that almost weird feeling like, oh right, yeah, this is what it feels like to be above the water. Weird. It's like that. So it's a bit like that, the feeling. And so I question the validity of whether that's even real. I think that's part of the lie. I think it's part of the illusion. I think it's part of the illusion of this world, right? And I think that's how the archons have deceived us. They've deceived us into believing this the story of death, right? By forcing us to identify with flesh as being alive, where flesh is just one part of life. And when we are super conscious to that this is just one part of our experience, then it's sort of like you could think of like waking up in the morning as a new life and then going to sleep at night and then being reborn in the morning. If you think of that as an idea, as a concept, then that's sort of like reincarnation, really. And the very idea, I keep getting this weird little flash in the background of the screen. I wonder what that's about. What's going on? Do you want to come here? You want to come here? Come. There you go. Oh, it's your daddy's little boy. Oh, because the daddy's boy's very moody today, huh? Tell you what. Yes. Is that where you want to be? Hey. Okay, well, he wants to go on chew the cables. He loves chewing cables because the cables are so much fun to chew. But alas, they are less fun to chew than what he knows. If it gets into the core of a cable, he'll know about the electricity inside it and just how uncool that is. So yeah, the very idea of the nature of this the very nature. Oh, the keyboard. Yes, that's a lot of fun too, isn't it? I know you love playing with a keyboard. The very nature of that's very weird. I can't seem to close those windows. Weird. Okay, so yeah, that's strange. Control Alt Delete. I just want to try and close this one thing. It's really winding me up. Starting the task manager in the background because I can't seem to close something, and I think it's affecting my and tasks. There we go. End task. Windows Explorer. There we go. Okay. I just had to close that thing because I think it was interfering somehow with my software. It's been open for days and couldn't seem to close the files. So yeah, I do think that we are being duped into the very idea of life and death as we know it. And I think that's one of the biggest lies that is part of time is that we're alive now as distinct from being alive before we were born. as distinct from being alive after we've left the flesh. And that notion, once again, has been given to us by the church forefathers, if we really get right down to it, right? The claim that this life is all important, right? And this life is the most important thing, which is true because this life is the most accessible right now. But that everything hinges upon one thing, right? That we go to heaven after this, and that's the end. And I think that in itself is a lie, right? Not that we don't progress and that we don't progress through the heavenly spheres. Not that we can't go to places which are nicer, sweeter, better than this place, for lack of better terms. But the idea of life as a contingency that follows a particular notion, I think, is a lie that was taught to us, where the continuity of life is something which is just part of life. However, we can end up with a worse deal than what we've got here, or a better deal. And whether we get a worse deal or a better deal is dependent upon how we handle this deal, which is like, makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Like, if you're going to break it right down. So the spirit of Gnosticism, then, if we really want to break it to its simple, most simple, core, simple denominators, is within us, there are two potentials. There's the future and the past. Within us, there is that aspect which is experiencing and that aspect of us which is acting. And the aspect of us that acts within the aspect that is experiencing. This is important. We act through our experiences. And our experiences encapsulate our action. So the divine feminine is that sphere of experience. And the divine masculine is that sphere of action. And so the Father, Mother, God within us is us impregnating the Mother God with our Father God essence of action. And that impregnation we can see as the divine child. And so the divine child is where the action and the experience cross over, right? And this is the core tenets of the Trinity, right? If we get right down to it, that the action within the experience produces the experience of the action as a distinct experience within the sphere of experience as a result of action, right? So you have the sphere of experience, you have the sphere of action, we have the action moving through within the sphere of experience, and thus we have a feedback loop where within that sphere of experience, the sphere of action imprints itself upon a sphere within the sphere of experience to produce the sphere of experience of the action within the sphere of experience that houses the action to begin with. And that then becomes a divine child. So the divine child is the experience of our action, karma. Doesn't that sound like karma? Right? Because the experience of our action then becomes its own form of experience that we now carry within this sphere of experience. And that experience of action then produces a chain of causal events, because that action then becomes the cause of another action, becomes the cause of another action. And that action resulted from the cause, right? That was an action. And so this continual chain of causality is moving through this divine child. And the divine child thus holds the chain, if you will. And so this represents freedom within us, this divine child, this archetype of the divine child. And the divine child is that aspect of us which is pure. So the pure aspect of us is where we are purely experiencing the experience of our action within the sphere of experience through our action. And this divine pure experience thus is the root of the self, right? This is the true awareness and perception of the self moving. The matter that we then experience is an after effect of this process. Effect of that process comes into being because we become enamored by certain experiences of our actions, right? And so certain experiences of our actions we repress because we can't handle them. Certain experiences of our actions we deify because we like them. The experiences of our actions that we like to identify ourselves with. Those experiences of our actions that we can't face, we deny them. And that denial facilitates the shadow element of our consciousness. And so we become fractured within this experience. And the fracturing thus produces, the yang and the yin potentials through which all the other myriad of reactions to these actions become this world we're living in. If we remove all of that, then we go back to the core of the divine child. And the core of the divine child is essentially the experience of our action. So, and that is, I believe, true liberation. So, yes, the Gnostics wish to become liberated from this world, but not from this world, just from our perception and our experience of this world that prevents us from recognizing the divine child within us, which is the true experience of our actions. Because this true experience of our actions is a very pure, very undiluted form of awareness. And this is essentially what we call the conscience. Right? This conscience is a derivative of this divine child's presence within us. And so we speak of the human heart, we speak of compassion, we speak of love, we speak of all of these different aspects. And these are all just different emanations of this divine presence within us. And Western occults, we speak of this as being, our holy guardian angel. We speak of it as the soul, right? And if we look at like Vedic cosmology for a moment, let's just for a moment, right? So I'll break it down into its most simplest picture, which is so simple to understand that you cannot miss it. So let's get this on the screen. Come on, baby, let's roll. Let's roll again like we did last summer. Mm-hmm. So here we see the same idea, right? We see the Shushumna, which that's the divine child within us, right? Then we see the Ida, right? And the Ida is the sphere of experience. And then we see the Pingala. And the Pingala is the sphere of action. And so we relate ourselves more. We find the Pingala more relatable because it's more related to this world of activity. So we relate ourselves to action without recognizing that the action, the movement of action of Pingala that defines the space of Ida are resolving themselves within Shushumna. And the Shushumna is the essence of both of these. So you cannot have the action moving through the experience unless the action and the experience have been separated from each other. And that process of separating the action from experience resolves in the Shushumna becoming distinct from the Ida and the Pingala, where when you go up into the higher realm of being, look at the Ajna chakra, for example. What do you see here? Right? What do you see here? Well, let's look at what we don't see there. We don't see the Ida and the Pingala. Why don't we see the Ida and the Pingala? Well, because from that perspective, there is no distinction between action, experience, right? Or the divine child of experiencing the action within the experience of action. So here we have a beautiful model of the Gnostic potential of the Father, Mother, God, and the divine child. But here we see it in India. And it's the same concept. People just can't see it because they don't understand and appreciate the deeper mystical and metaphysical, esoteric knowledge that Gnosticism is trying to share with us, right? So it's important for us to look at this word Gnostic, right? And whenever I hear the word Gnostic, it makes me think about the nose, right? And Gnostic. And why it makes me think of the nose is the sense of smell. The sense of smell is essentially the Muladhara chakra, the root chakra, right? And it's the element of earth. But it's also that experience of the senses that does not route through the routing mechanism that is bound before the experience of reality is formulated in the parietal lobes, right? It has to route, all the senses have to route through the thalamus, where the pineal gland is attached. And they get sort of translated, if you will, in a format that the parietal lobes can manage in order to facilitate the dream of reality. So the sense of smell is distinct. The sense of smell is innate and transcendent. That's why like frankincense and incense and myrrh and all of these things are so important. And so the sense of smell takes you back to your roots. It's the one sense that doesn't lie. It tells the truth. That's why a dog will always understand and a cat will always understand to trust this sense of smell. All the other senses can lie. All the senses can lie, but the sense of smell doesn't lie. It only tells the truth. That's something to think about for a moment, right? That's a very interesting. You can have an illusion of, of light. You can have optical illusions, auditory. I remember when I was living in Israel by Chofek Ziv, hearing a psychedelic trance party. Actually, I think it was Goa trance. Look, it was about a quarter of a century ago. No, it was more than a quarter of a century. It was less than 30 years ago, okay? When I lived in Chofek Ziv in Israel I spent a couple of years there. And I remember one night hearing this trance party, and I went to go and find it. And I walked along the beach, and I walked for kilometers and kilometers, and the party was right over there. And I'd get to that place, and the party's just over there. And I'd get to the party was about 8 kilometers away, 10 kilometers. Somehow, because it was by the beach, the sound traveled along the water. Don't ask me how it happened, but it traveled far. I couldn't believe it, right? And when I followed the road away from the beach, I couldn't hear it anymore. When I went close to the sea, there I can hear the party. It's there. It was only traveling, but the party wasn't out at sea. The party was over there. So, this is sound can be tricked. Sound can lie. Sound can light, illusions of light. You can see a hologram. Nature creates its own holograms at times. And so for all the other senses too, even the sense of touch, right, can lie, right? For example, when you are experiencing prana in your body, you might experience a sensation of wetness, right? You might experience a sensation of wetness. Here's a dirty little boy. Yes, daddy shut up, puppykins. Yes. Huh? Does it come for daddy's for strokey? Where's it daddy's little whoopsie? Yes, daddy's little boy. So, go up onto the shoulder. There we go. Get yourself a nice little perch. Oh, you want to go and play with the cables? I can't allow this, my sweetheart. Can't do it. No, can't do it. Oh, he's feeling brave. So, yeah, all the senses can lie, but the sense of smell doesn't. And the reason is that we do not impinge our thoughts upon smell. Smell transcends our thoughts. It's disconnected from our inner mechanisms. It is a substantial experience. And so it's universal in a way. So this is why I think the idea, when I hear the word Gnosticism, it always makes me think about the sense of smell, because you can smell the truth. Oh, you want to chew my phone? You're going to chew the cover off. Yep. I don't know whether that's ideal. Don't think it's optimal. So, yeah, that comes down to, like, I think the crux of what Gnosticism is. It's really recognizing that you have the ability to smell the truth, that you can trust your own instincts, that you can trust your senses. You can trust your sense of smell. You can trust your ability to smell a fish if people are lying to you or misleading you. But it comes with trust, and trusting that you are here with the abilities, that you have the divine capacity to understand truth, to grasp truth. And this is why the early Christian fathers had to do away with Gnosticism and had to hide it away, had to try and pretend that, no, Gnosticism is one thing, Manichaeism is one thing, Marcionism is one thing. They're all separate things. They were all separate blasphemies against God. No. It's clever, hey? It's so clever. Okay, Daddy's going to put you on the floor. Okay, there we go. Straight for the cables. Cockatiels, they're very clever. No, he's getting very angry with Daddy now because Daddy's not letting him play. He wants to play with those lovely toys there. Why am I being so mean? All these great toys I won't let him play with. So this very idea that human beings have within us the capacity towards truth, the capacity to grasp and understand truth, that we do not need to be taught anything, that a newborn baby, if left to its own devices, will become fully super conscious of the spiritual realities without anybody having to teach this child anything. That's the essential tenet of Gnosticism. And that's the fundamental truth that had to be fragmented and defamed. Hence, the Cathars, they're not Gnostic. No, separate. Who were there? A different bunch. So you've got this bunch and this bunch. They had to frame them all with different names instead of recognizing there were different groups of people that were all carrying the same fundamental, very ancient form of Christianity that was the core teachings of Emmanuel. The core teachings, right? That all you need to get in touch with the kingdom of heaven is to open the door of your heart and go within. And leave no stone turned over when you go on that journey inside yourself. And within there, you will meet the divine Christ. And I mentioned it earlier, the idea, I saw this on a video, Our Tuition. Remember I mentioned the video the other day where, what's that guy's name that was being interviewed? I forget his name. The guy who does facial physiognomy. I was on George's show. Go and check out George's channel. George's got some really cool content, actually. For those of you who don't know him, Jord. And he was one of the things this guy was saying that he was interviewing. It's his latest interview. And I think it's at JORD. I forget. I think it's something like that. I think it's. But if you just put Jord, it'll probably come up. One of the things that he said was, let's get this right. Right. Gosh, I'm losing my place here. Now I'm starting to think about trying to remember the name of Jordan, this guy. I'm losing the thread of what it was that I was actually wanting to say, which is a danger. Allow your mind to wander too freely, and it will free itself completely. But the basic idea that we are what was this idea? It was given to us by the church. Just let me try and remember the name. What was it that they called, that they say is the Son of Man? The Son of Man. Right. So the Son of Man has always been translated by the Christians, by the old religious forefathers, as meaning Emmanuel, the Christ. But in the older texts, we see the Son of Man meaning humanity. And so one of the things he was saying in that show was that, oh, well, the Son of Man means Christ. No, Son of Man does not mean Christ. Where you see the Son of Man written does not mean Christ. Yes, it's been interpreted to mean Christ by a certain bunch of people that want to indoctrinate you. I appreciate that. But that does not mean that the Son of Man, if you go back into the older languages before that, go into the Paleo-Hebrew, before the Hebrew, before the Aramaic, where the words that are being translated into the Son of Man means humanity. Oh, even in the Jewish, even in the Aramaic, even in the Paleo-Hebrew and the Phoenician before that, when you speak of the Son of Man, you're speaking about a lineage of humanity. It's got to do with the ancestral lineage, right? The Son of Man. Man exists and man is evolving. And man evolves through the sons, mankind through the children. So the children are the expression of humanity of now in the future. It speaks of humanity journeying through time. It has nothing to do with the so-called guy who was on a cross. Absolutely nothing to do. So they mistranslate that very important phrase and change the meaning of that phrase to mean that man, where what is being said in the Bible is that when you awaken, you go within, right? Now we're getting back to shamanism. I want you guys to pay attention. When you go within and you seek deep within yourself the kingdom of heaven, and you leave no stone unturned, you shall see the Son of Man. Mankind and mankind's offspring is an ancestral lineage. You will see the ancestral lineage within yourself of where you came from and where you will be, what you will become. Your future of progeny and your past will be there. This is highly shamanic. So if you read the Bible and you see the Son of Man, take that brainwashing out of your head and look at it and go and double check. Don't take my word for it. Go and look at the old Hebrew meanings. Go and look at the Paleo-Hebrew meanings. Go and look at the, where the language comes from, where those words come from. You will find, what is it? Ben Adam, right? Isn't it supposed to have a yot there? Yes, Ben Adam. So, Adam obviously means mankind, and Ben means the Son of Man. And if you look at that word, Ben Adam, right? It means a human being that's mortal. right? And it emphasizes human frailty, mortality, and the distinction between mortal man and the divine. For the example, God addresses the prophet Ezekiel as Ben Adam over 90 times, right? In the Old Testament. And this is in the Bible. But still, they managed to brainwash everybody into believing that when that word was said, it meant that man who was born that was on the cross. You see how the brainwashing works? They change the meaning of a word. Then they change the meaning of another word. They change the meaning of this. Now they start to drive the narrative. They couldn't do this while Marcion was around, because Marcion would argue, no, the Son of Man is the mortal human being, the human being that is now, that will become a different being, that will become a different being. It means birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. It means an ancestral lineage. Human seen through the eyes of time. And time means the re-embodiment of the human being through time. That's what that phrase means. So when we start to appreciate that, we can see how much inference of ancestors is in the Bible. When you actually read the Bible with an open mind and an open eyes, and you go like, wow, like, so that's what those words actually mean. So Ezekiel is referred to as this so many times. And, you know, it's very, very, very interesting, because when when you start to really break that down, right? When you break it down and you go into the Paleo Hebrew, all right, so have I got the screen on the tab? Let's see. So you might say, well, the Hebrew is a modern bastardization. Yes, it is. I agree. But you go into its older roots and you go into the Paleo Hebrew. And so the Paleo Hebrew, right, the ancient pictographic script, and so you look at the literal meaning of each picture letter. The phrase is built from two root words, right? The ben, or spelt with the bet, a tent in a house, and a nun, the seed, a fish, right? And together, the house and the seed is the continuation of the house, right? The continuation of the house, the re-emergence of the Father as the Son. And Adam, right, which is an ox, which represents the fundamental prana, the spirit, the dalet, which is the door that moves, that through which that spirit moves, and the mem, the waters upon which that spirit is bouncing, right? So the fundamental life force that moves through the door, which is consciousness, and rebounds across upon the waters to produce this cadence of being, that is humanity. And so that humanity that is being continued, the continuation of the house. So this is what you find when you go into the older. And I bet if you go into Phoenician, I wonder if we'll be able to find it here. Usually you gotta really squeeze. Oh, spell. You gotta really squeeze. You gotta really squeeze it. So one like a son of man arrives on the clouds to execute judgment and receive an eternal kingdom, right? The cloud rider. And that's the book of Daniel, right? The Canaanite storm god Baal. So, you know, Baal means Lord, by the way, just in case you want. And it relates to the bell, the ringing of the bell, which has got to do with awakening the ancestors, right? In our traditional worship form of prayer. And you still have it in Africa. You still have places where you will ring a bell or you have a chime, and that will be there to awaken the ancestors so that they can come and be present during your offering. So there's just so much about the way in which the Bible's been interpreted needs to be like knocked on its butt. And this gives us an insight to the spirit of Gnosticism. You see, the Son of Man is not some other embodied being. The Son of Man is the ancestors that will come on a cloud. Why will the ancestors come on a cloud? The ancestors will come on a cloud to judge us. Damn straight. Remember what we said about the divine child. It manifests as conscience. So our own conscience will be judging us as per our ancestral knowledge, because we carry all the knowledge of our ancestors, past and future. We're just not aware of it. It's all locked up within us. And that ancestral knowledge will be able to judge us fairly upon our life, because the continuity is there of our fathers and forefathers and those that come after us, and how we have made good with what we've been given in this time to continue the lineage. Have we honored the sacred lineage of our ancestors or not? And this is a very shamanic concept, right? This is why the shaman honors the ancestors. But they don't do rituals per se. It's not part of shamanism. But honoring the ancestors is very much a part of shamanism. And how does a shaman honor the ancestors? Sits in darshan. The Vedic, the Himalayan shaman sits in darshan with the ancestors and allows them to teach us, to show us, to guide us, to reveal us. How do we honor our parents? Right? We listen. We listen to our parents. We learn all that we can learn from them. That way we can honor them, because we can carry their knowledge and their seed to its best potential to give to our children. That will be the best way to honor our ancestors. So what we get, if we can get more to give more, that's how we honor, right? It's how do you honor your employer, right? You get more responsibility from your employer by proving yourself worthy of the responsibility, and then exercising that responsibility to do the best work that we can do to optimize the business, so that those that follow downscale in the business can benefit from our presence. That's how we honor our employer. So that honor, you can put it into any paradigm. How you honor your family, your mother, your employer. How do we honor our ancestors? It's the same. Honor is honor. So, when we start to look at the true spirit of Gnosticism, it's very much centered on ancestral worship. And it's very much shamanic. And it's very much the core of Vedic knowledge and wisdom from ancient India. And so we can see, much of what we've been taught in the modern day is a bit of a bastardization of all of this knowledge. And so they've wanted to demonize Gnosticism, because the reason Gnosticism needs to be demonized is if we can see the truth of Gnosticism, then we can see the truth of Christianity. Then we can see exactly how Christianity has been used to dupe us. And once we see the lies, we will be able to understand the model of PSYOP. That's the key. You see, the model of PSYOP hasn't changed. The same PSYOP that the Christian fathers used to religiously control us is being used now by science to scientifically control us. It's the same model. The same model has been used of the tithing system to tax us, to control us financially, right? The same system of the commandments that thou shalt do and shalt not do have been used by the legislative system and the lawful legal system to control our behavior and limit us, right? And so we can extrapolate endlessly on and on and on and on. It's all the same system. all the PSYOP in the world that we're experiencing now is not new. But if we can see where the PSYOP started and how the PSYOP has been engineered and how the truth has been turned into a lie within the beginning roots of the fundamental Christian roots, because it's so deeply embedded within our egregoric consciousness, our unconscious, as something that our ancestors were dominated by, and their ancestors and ancestors and ancestors. It's so much a part of us. We might be rebelling against Christianity, but we are acting out the same pattern that our ancestors acted out. When we pray down at the proverbial church of science and we worship the gods, the scientists, right? And we maintain the sanctity of the church of science's teachings. We are still doing what we were taught to do by the Christian fathers. When we listen to the YouTubers telling us that Gnosticism is essentially an evil doctrine because it's about hating physical reality, it's about escaping from the world, this is exactly what the early church fathers told us to fear about Gnosticism. Why? Because they based their entire system upon the teachings of a being that came here to teach us Gnostic truth. But then they had to twist it, because Gnosticism frees you. True Gnosticism says that you yourself are your own agent. You don't need anybody to tell you what to do. You don't need to pay taxes. You don't need to listen to the other people's laws. You listen to the laws within yourself that you know are true, right? Is it right to harm someone? No. Why? Do you want someone to harm you? Well, from a true agnostic perspective, the entire universe is within me, and that this universe is an illusion. So all of you in this universe are actually within me, and I'm within you, within some other universe which is within us. And that these physical emanations of ourselves are just physical emanations of a deeper reality. But within that deeper reality, if I'm harming you here, I'm harming myself there. Right? So what did Jesus teach? Emmanuel, he taught, do unto others as how you would have them do unto yourself, right? And that's like fundamental 101 Gnosticism, right? Because if the entire truth and the entire universe is within you, then whatever you do to any part of the universe, you're doing to yourself. And whatever you do to yourself within yourself, you're doing to the entire universe. So the truth of love becomes the only currency, which is exactly the teachings that Emmanuel was bringing, right? But do they teach you that Emmanuel, why does the church conveniently miss the fact that Emmanuel was surrounded by armed guards? He was surrounded by armed guards. Yeah, they couldn't edit out all of the Bible. The fact that a Roman soldier lost an ear, they couldn't edit that out. This was an important part of the narrative. They couldn't edit out the other times when Emmanuel tells his disciples to not draw their swords. Oh, so the disciples were carrying swords. Yeah, they were carrying swords. They were armed. Right. That's a different perspective, isn't it? Right? A different perspective. Completely different perspective to the narrative that they want us to believe, that you just must turn the other cheek. Turn the other cheek. Right? Yes, you must turn the other cheek. But what does that mean? What's the true meaning of turn the other cheek, right? When it comes to dealing with people, you turn the other cheek. But when it comes to dealing with oppressors, right? When people come in to harm your family and they come with swords to harm your family, is it your duty to protect your family? But if your wife slaps you, do you slap her back or do you turn the other cheek? Just saying, think about it, right? If you're a man, for example. Those of you that have ever had a situation where a woman like smacks you, I've been in that situation. You can't hit a woman back. Like, you just can't do it, dude. Like, you'll collapse her. You'll harm her. She can hit you. You can be a little bit bunged up, but you'll be okay. But if you hit a woman, like, my gosh, you're going to harm her. So, I mean, if you know how to strike well and you're trained, then you're dangerous. So, you know, in the same sense, like turn the other cheek is something that belongs in the family with people, in your village. It doesn't help to have war in your village. You need peace. You need respect. You need love. You need to work together. But when a group of other men come with swords and they want to take your woman and force them into acts of, um, unwilling sexual practices, for example, it's your duty to stand up and wield a sword and say, no, you're not doing that to my wife or my daughter. Sorry. So it's our duty to protect our children. If there's people that want to go in the playground and touch our kids, it's our duty to go and knock those people on the nose. Boink. You stop that, buddy. It's our responsibility. So there's the truth of what it means to be a sovereign human being. Means that you don't follow a set of external rules, right? Thou shalt not kill. That's a set of external rules, brainwashing rules. But you know within yourself that you want to honor your ancestors. And by honoring your ancestors, you have to behave in a certain way. But if someone comes and they want to end the life of a loved one, it's your duty to protect that loved one with whatever means it takes to protect them with as much restraint as possible. So they taught us to believe that if the state comes with soldiers and they want to take your kids away, you must just allow them. Turn the other cheek. Oh, they want to take these kids. Turn the other cheek. They want to take those kids. No, nonsense. There's nothing sovereign about that. Gnosticism is about becoming who you are and taking personal responsibility and being a sovereign being that doesn't adhere to any external nonsense. You find only the truth within your heart and you delve deep into your heart to question what truth is. And you're accountable only to your ancestors and no one else. Because your ancestors are the administration of the divine spirit. God's place in this world, if you will. And that is the Son of Man that will come on a cloud when you are ready, when you awaken to the level of consciousness that you can travel within yourself. You will see the Son of Man on a cloud coming to judge you. And that has got a lot to do with the transition between life and not being alive. So, Gnosticism has many faces. But I think like when we look at the core of Gnostic cosmology and Gnostic philosophy, it has been misrepresented. Now, I just wanted to have a rant. Get it off my chest. What do you guys think in the chat? Let me know. What are your thoughts? Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Do you think there's more eternal life? Yeah. Well, Vince, life is eternal, isn't it? Swallowed up in victory. Interesting you mentioned victory. Netzach. Yeah. Netzach's association with eternal potential is there very much. And it's fundamental. That's where we get the idea of octave, right? Octave. The octave are the 7 principles that are revolving in a sphere. The problem is that let's get this on the screen. The problem is that the predators don't come wielding swords. They don't face off fairly. They come in an insidious concealment. They plant mind seeds of misery that propagate in places of weakness. Yeah, Khalees, you're completely right. And we need to have the swords necessary to face up to that, right? We need to keep it real. And I do think that the world is sadly misguided at the moment, and that this woke ideology is really toxic. It's a big part of the problem that we're facing in the modern times. And I do get the impression that, we will overcome these things, but I don't think it's necessarily going to happen in a hurry. I do think that there are going to be some terrible global worldly civil wars. Um, we had the giant wars in the past. I was talking to my girlfriend, my beautiful, lovely girlfriend, about this the other day. The wars of the giants, and I'm not talking about the post-flood war. I'm talking about the earlier wars. There were wars between the giant kingdoms, and I think in the future we're going to have the robot wars. This is what I've seen. This is what my ancestors have been showing me for the past 47 years. What they've been showing me for the last 47 years is that we're going to have robotic wars, and AI and robots and humans, and I've got a clear sense that we will overcome this. We will transcend. We will win, as it were, as if there is such a thing as winning a war, right? I mean, this is a ridiculous concept. Like, how can you win a war? But we will overcome the unjust. We will overcome the unjust. And yeah, Vincent, I don't think it's going to be like a fantasy tale where everybody's going to there will be a lot of casualties. There will be a lot of change in the world, but in a sense, that possibly has to happen. It's the way the world. It's the way the world works. It's the way the world turns. It's the mechanisms of proliferation, of time. And sometimes the slate has got to be cleaned for the next slate, and there's so much corruption that much of that corruption has become endemic within many people. And so that corruption will, by definition, cause many people to no longer have a place in this world due to their corruption and the corrupting influences that they bring into this world. I think that's sort of, that's how fate works. Namaste, dear Salad. Lovely to have you here. Big love to you as well. First resurrection, second coming. You in a hurry, dear Gaz? I'm closing up shop anyway. It's been 2 hours, just about 2 minutes before 2 hours. I'm sending you big love and big blessings. I hope you are having an absolutely fantastic day, all of you. Thank you for coming to enjoy this little banter, and see you all later on this week, probably on Friday. Have an absolutely fantastic week. I hope you got what you came for. And yeah, Gaz, hurry to change the world. Gaz is rushing. He's like, we gotta get it done, dude. We got time. Like, what's the time? Like, Gaz is the shunt man. He's got to shunt everybody, wake everybody up in the morning. Like, come on, people, we got to change the world. Look at the time. Anyway, sending you all big love and big blessings. Have an absolutely great day, and keep the smile alive. And don't forget, life is short. So enjoy your journey to your ancestors. Sending you all peace, honor, love, and respect. And do like the show. Do smash the like button and share it. Share the live in whatever channels you share things in. I think people need to get this alternative perspective of what Gnosticism is. I think it's important. Otherwise, Om Namah Shivaya, Shiv Shankar Bhagwan Namaha. Bom Bholenath. Bholenath Sabka Saath. Big love to all of you.